All right, thank you, and thank you, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're at. So Jeff Bowers has worked in the AE RCS space for 20 years. He started at Imaginet 15 years ago. Jeff is a Revit and has been working with the Reality Services team for 14 years. And as I stated earlier, my name is Tyler Michael. I've worked in the reality capture space for 6 years now. I started with Imaginet back in 2017. I am a reality capture specialist that focuses on hardware, software, and workflows. And my expertise extends to reality capture solutions and the Geosystems technologies. So without further ado, I'd like to pass this over to our technical manager, Jeff.
Thank you. So welcome everyone, whether it's good morning or good afternoon. We welcome you. Hope you guys enjoy this, get something out of it. Again, feel free to log some questions into the chat that is being monitored. So advanced reality capture techniques, this could be a 2, 3, 4 day venture. Don't worry. It's not, we're not going to let it go that long, but we definitely could extend it out. So what we're going to do is just hit some of the highlights, some things that kind of near and dear to myself, things that a lot of people sometimes don't do, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but we want to make sure that we at least get the message out there so that you can at least start looking at it. We're going to touch on a couple of things, Register 360, including some settings, triangulation, cleaning of data. That's kind of a big one. We're going to jump into a few things for CloudWorks for Revit. We'll touch on some CloudWorks for AutoCAD, depending on time, and then get into 3DR, kind of explain what that is, and then look at some new software, not necessarily brand new, but it's still in an early stage. A lot of people, it's just now catching on, and then talk about some of the services that we have available. So the next slide, what we're going to do is kind of dive pretty deep into Register 360. So one of the things that when we start looking at collecting data, look, everybody can collect data. It's not difficult. There are settings on the scanner that you need to pay attention to. There are things, scanning the right way. You know, we could that could be a whole webinar in and of itself. But what we want to do is look at kind of the back end of the workflow. We've always been told, or we've often been told, man, for every 1 day you scan in a field, it's a 1 day processing back in the office. That's not the case. That's gone. We haven't seen that with the Leica products in several years. Register 360, one of the biggest things that we hear individuals talk about is it just doesn't do what I want it to do. Okay, you're probably right. What are you wanting it to do? Well, I want to have a tighter registration. I want to have things set up a little bit differently. Okay, the first thing I'm going to tell you is we need to go into those settings. As you can see, there's 6 tabs worth the settings. 6. These tabs are going to look at everything from how accurate your links are, you know, how your registration from scan 1 to scan 2 or scan 2 to scan 3, how are those, you know, what are those criterias that we're meeting, right? In the Leica software, a lot of what you'll see are what we call links. They're red, green, yellow, and an occasional blue. All right, that green link, that is a link that I have gone through into my settings and set to my standard. My thought is, anytime I go in and register, if I go to that building and I pull a traditional tape measure from point A to point B, what am I reading that tape measure to? A lot of people go, well, we read that tape measure to the nearest 1/4 inch. All right. Then what I typically, my goal is, right or wrong or indifferent, I typically have my registration, my link set to a better tolerance. So if I field measure to a 1/4 of an inch when I laser scan, I want to get it down to an 1/8 inch or less. Just how my thinking. So when you are looking at the Leica Register 360 software, that is one thing that we need to set in the settings. Don't assume that the settings that are used out of the box are perfect. They're great. They're wonderful. They're good, absolutely, but I can make them better. I'm making them more to fit my need. All right. That is a big thing. Customizing these standards to fit your scan standard. How many of you have a scan standard? How many of you have a, standard operating procedures known as an SOP on what you expect when you go out to the field? When you come back, what is the expectation of that scan, of that data? Does it meet certain criteria? Those criteria are set by you, the user. Once we have those standards, we take Cyclone Register 360 Plus, we set them to those standards, and what's nice is once you set them, they're there. They're saved as default. So making sure that Register 360, to me, that's one of the more important things to get done, is making sure that we have those settings set up correctly. All right, next slide. So this is another one that I feel pretty strong about. Again, my background, I'm process engineering. Been doing it my whole life. Do a lot of survey workflow and in that type of facility. Triangulation of scans, to me, is very, 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 very important. What does triangulation of scans mean? That means taking up to 3 scans and interconnecting them to create that triangulation. That is eliminating, that is minimizing the amount of compounding error in that scan. That's important. The tighter I get that triangulation, the better my registration is. That's a big deal. And now what is absolutely fantastic about triangulation is now when I'm out in the field and I'm using an RTC, a BLK 360, the G1 version, the G2 version, if I'm using those scanners, even the P series, P40, P50, even some folks are still using the P20s, the older units, I can now use the Leica Field 360 app, connect to those scanners, register my data in the field in real time. I can take it a step further now. I can now triangulate those scans on my iPad. Fantastic. Why? Because now I'm scanning, I'm registering, and I'm able to triangulate all while in the field. That's going to eliminate some work, a lot of work, the majority of my work back in the office. Being able to now triangulate those scans on my iPad, it's a great, great, great tool. Now, there are times where you just are not going to be able to close a loop. We want to try. We want to try to close the loop as much as possible. For instance, take a look at the image that I have on my screen. Green, that means it matches, it fits my standard for that link. You'll notice that I have a couple yellow, all right? That doesn't mean that they're wrong. That just means that they do not meet my green tolerance, but they do fall under the criteria of my yellow tolerance. So that's still great. So again, the last color, I know I mentioned it before, would be the red link. Listen, the red link's not necessarily wrong. It just says it exceeds my green level of tolerance, my yellow level of tolerance, and you may want to review it. Okay. There are times where I would love to close the loop. And if you notice in that picture on the left-hand side, I've got it triangulated, and one of the little orbs is blue. I would love to triangulate that one and the one directly above it. I just didn't get the scan in a good enough location to where I could do that. Is that bad? No. Is it great? Doesn't really matter. The overall registration for that particular point cloud was 1/8 of an inch with about 61% overlap. That's almost as good as you can get. Could we have added another scan right there next to that? Absolutely. Do we need to? Probably not, because I got everything I needed. So triangulation, big deal. Triangulate, triangulate, triangulate. Are you going to be able to triangulate everything? Nope, but try. Closing loops. If you successfully triangulate, generally speaking, you're going to have closed loops. There's every once in a while, you just won't be able to do it. The other thing is, if at all possible, let's set our data to control. A lot of people go, oh, that's a lot of work. No, it's not. It's not a lot of work. What's a lot of work is trying to get it to align to a control if it's not set to control. You're spinning your wheels. You're wasting a lot of valuable time. If we can set it to control, we should set it to control. How much extra work does that take? Well, it's going to take a target package, so we can set that up over the known benchmarks out in the field. It's going to take, maybe one extra scan, maybe. We have to identify the targets, and we have to have the civil engineer drawing that shows us our northing, easting, and elevation. Now, I get it. Not all of that's available all the time, but when it is available, we should try to get that implemented. So to recap so far, what we've talked about is registration. It's a big deal. Making sure our settings are what we want them to be. Making sure that, our scan standard is we're utilizing that scan standard to set our settings, to make sure that as an organization, everything is typically done the same way. The other thing, triangulating, closing any of our loops. Let's get that, taken care of as much as possible. And last but not least is try to get everything set to survey control. Again, not required, but it is a good way of making sure that everything is tied together the way it should be. Next slide. Now, looking into some advanced, we've gone through, we've talked about getting the data. I think I accidentally skipped a slide, but I'll cover it real quick. Cleaning the data. Cleaning the data, very, very, very important. It's one of those things where we could spend a lot of time cleaning data. I mean, a lot of time. It's like a black hole that you could get sucked into and get lost. Why? Secretly, it's kind of fun. I kind of enjoy it. There's tools that, Tyler, go down one slide for me. I think I got those out of order. My apologies, everyone. There are so many tools inside of the software that's going to allow us to clean data. One of my favorites is detect moving objects. I mean, I laugh and joke. If any of you know me, I laugh and joke quite a bit. This is the only time that we can legally delete somebody. I can go in say, you know what, detect moving objects. The software is going to look at all the different scans. It's going to see what moved between scans. It's going to flag them so that I can delete it. That is point cloud data only. Well, wonder if they're in the picture. Well, there's a couple things we could do. How many of you knew that in the Leica software, we can actually go in and blur faces, blur different parts and pieces? Some of it's automated, some of it's manual. So if you don't want them in, if you don't, excuse me, if you don't want somebody in the photograph, I can export that photograph, Photoshop it, remove that, put it back in, re-overlay it, and it's going to update the point cloud. I think one of the more underutilized tools in the Register 360 software is the smooth surface. So if I go in, I'm able to do that smooth surface. Let's say I'm a site guy and I go out and I scan the front of this building, a school building. Maybe we're going to redo the front entrance, and there's a ton of people there. You all, if any of you have done scanning before, having a scanner sitting on the sidewalk, it attracts attention. Unbelievable. I mean, it's crazy how much attention you get with a scanner. Well, okay, not a big deal. I can go in, utilize the smooth surface tool, pick on that side, those sidewalks, pick on that street, that parking lot, and it's going to separate the parking lot or the surface from everything. At which point, I can go in and start deleting cars, deleting the people. I can go in and delete all that. That smooth surface is a really underutilized tool that is very, very effective in getting rid of data. The other, it's utilized, but again, a lot of people utilize it for different things. Is the limit boxes. You know, going in, being able to grab a limit box, you know, change it to any size that I want, to basically compress that point cloud down to a smaller area so that I can work with it. You'll notice on the right hand side, that image, what I did was I wanted to clip my building right below the structure so I could see the lift, the cherry picker, or the scissor lift, so that I can go in and get rid of that. So I utilized my limit box, shrunk it down, brought it down. At that point, now I could utilize the manager, turn that off, use smooth surface very quickly. In about less than a minute, I was able to clean that out and get all that major information removed out of the point cloud, so that when I bring it into AutoCAD, bring it into Revit, MicroStation, you know, BricsCAD, etc., I am seeing really just what I need to be working with. I don't see a lot of extra stuff. Now, last on the whole Register 360 part is, you know, working with specific file types. You know, Register 360 is going to allow us to take out to many different file types. The best is the LGS file. Now people go, yeah, Jeff, you're saying that because you guys are a reseller. Yeah, well, that's one reason, but the real reason is because I really do believe in that file type. We've proven it time after time after time after time. This file is going to be significantly faster than a recap file, both creating it and working with it. File size, that's a big deal. We all know that the bigger file that we work with inside recap, the chances of us having to break that into 2 files so that it's usable. That's a known fact that almost anybody will tell you. If we have to work with a very, very large point cloud and we work with it in recap, you're probably going to break it up. With the Register 360 and the LGS file, I don't have to do that. The largest file that we have used in Register 360, I've got about an 800 gig point cloud file that I've worked with directly inside Revit. That was, a couple thousand scans. Revit brought it in. Was it slow? It's a little slower, but I would say compared to other file types, it was light years different. Very, very quick. Not only can we use that LGS file to bring it into CloudWorks for AutoCAD, Revit, Navisworks, but it also allows me to utilize that file type, the LGS file type, to get it into the TrueView local viewer, which is a free viewer. It's a lightweight viewer that allows us to navigate the point cloud, allows us to give that free viewer to the client, allows them to give them a much smaller LGS file to the client. It's not hogging up a lot of their data space, their storage space on their network, but it's also not hogging up a lot of hard drive space on my network. Now, my disclaimer, that point cloud data could be anything. Again, I've seen a 1 gig file or a couple 100 megabyte file, a gig file, all the way up to right out of about a terabyte file size. So when I say doesn't clog up, it's still going to be big data. It is what it is. Point cloud data, it's going to be big data. But the alternative is I don't have to have a file that's about 50 to 60% bigger. I can also take that point cloud data, like I was saying earlier, into the CloudWorks software, but I can also now take it into Cyclone Enterprise. Cyclone Enterprise, I'm not going to touch on it right now. I'll hit it here in a minute, but it is basically a central repository. Now, that is going to be kind of a data management tool for us. So, Tyler, if you could hit the next slide, please.
You want me to go back to this here?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So, got a little bit out of order, and for that I apologize. My bad. But we talked about cleaning, talked about registration, cleaning, all of that. Now let's talk about getting the data into the software that is going to assist us in making the deliverable. All right. First and foremost, there is no such thing as an easy button. I know, that stinks. Really wished I could just wave a finger and out comes a 3D model. If you know of a piece of software, I'm all ears. Let me know. But every piece of software that we've looked across and looked at over the past 10 years, it all requires some type of manual input by the user. Man, it is what it is. Now, I will tell you that when it comes to getting a model built, there are so many different ways of doing it. I could trace it. And those of you that I've met before or you've heard me speak before, you're going to hear me say this again. Data that is being traced is only as accurate as what? The mood that you are in. If you've had a really, really frustrating morning getting the kids to school, getting to the office in traffic, you may not be in the best of moods. Now I got to sit down and you're kind of grumbly. You're not going to be real interested in doing the best job of tracing this. Been there, done it. It is what it is. But let's stop. Let's take a step back. Now with the CloudWorks for Revit, especially the CloudWorks for Revit, CloudWorks for BricsCAD, things like that, 3D modeling. I now am extracting data, not tracing data. I'm now extracting, especially for the CloudWorks for Revit, the Leica add-in, I'm extracting walls, windows, doors, pipes, ducts, conduit, cable tray, structural steel. So now I am not only extracting that data, but as I extract it, it is also allowing me to QA QC it. That's a big deal. I want to make sure what I'm doing really does match the point cloud. And looking at the Revit tools, the CloudWorks for Revit tools, they are doing a lot of QA QC, you know, the data against the point cloud as we put that data in. All right, you know, giving the AutoCAD world some love. Okay, again, you know, it's not just, oh, I scanned this big building, I need a 2D AutoCAD drawing, so I'm gonna just sit here and trace it. No, absolutely not. There's tools inside CloudWorks for AutoCAD that are going to allow me to slice that point cloud and be able to pick on the walls and have it convert those to 2D polygons for me. Not automatic, but it's very, very, very close to really doing a lot of this for you. All right, you, the user, still have to pick on those parts and pieces. Creating sections and elevations, utilizing the point cloud. Now, you know, both in Revit and in AutoCAD, BricsCAD, etc., we are able to change the view of those of the point cloud views, and we're able to create those pretty fast. One of the big things about creating sections and elevations, especially in Revit, the nice thing is when I do create sections and elevations utilizing the point cloud, it is not adding any additional views. It's simply using a clipping manager to create those so that I can create and place that geometry where I need to. When I do that, everything ends up in that 3D model. Additional tools that some people, if you're using the CloudWorks for AutoCAD or the CloudWorks for Revit, some people know this, some people don't. There are 4 flatness tools inside the CloudWorks software. They do a fantastic FFF&L analysis. I can also do clash detection directly inside of Revit and AutoCAD using 3D models and the point cloud directly using the CloudWorks software. So, you know, it takes a giant leap forward of, instead of us having to have a manual process to recreate this data, to now we're utilizing software to algorithmically extract and give us a better product. So, next slide. Sorry, Tyler. All right. So then we jump into a more advanced software, Cyclone 3DR. For those of you that have been around the block a few times, this used to be called Reshaper, Technodigit Reshaper. Leica sees a huge influx of the requests for analysis, point cloud cleanup, meshing capability, texturings, things like that. They've seen a big increase in that demand. So Cyclone 3DR is now probably one of the premier softwares to go to be able to do a lot of this information. Next slide. Now, looking at, and you can go ahead and hit enter a couple times, Tyler. So getting more in depth into, you know, the 4 flatness. The 4 flatness tool in Cyclone 3DR is absolutely amazing. I take the point cloud, you know, you've got to know what 0 is, but once I have that little bit of information, we're talking a 4 flatness report, compare model to reality, model to the point cloud. Typically, this only takes about 5 or 10 minutes to create. It's visually pleasing. At any point in time, looking at all the different reports, I'm able to pick on any point in that mesh model with the regular model and be able to identify at every single point that you want to what that deviation is, what that forward flatness is. So, we can do big areas and say, okay, this is here, or we can get it really, really finite and start picking on all these different locations, and you'll notice that it starts building that custom report for us. Now, I say custom report, meaning you can pretty much customize it the way that you want to have it read the information that is needed. So it is more in depth, more detailed than what you would get out of the CloudWorks for Revit or CloudWorks for AutoCAD FFFNL. It's way more detailed. If you just need a simplistic FFNL, that's a great one to use. But if you really got to get into detail, this is what you want. And don't think of it. Don't be closed-minded. Look at it from all these different scenarios. Okay. I don't care if you're doing floor flatness, vertical shafts, even hulls of vessels like boats, ships. A ship goes out, got a big dent in it. How much is it dented? Is it in? Did it knock it out of tolerance? Do we need to bring it in and fix it? All of that information, if we've got a good scan and a good model, doing a comparison, it only takes minutes, not days or hours. Next. The other thing that Cyclone 3DR does a really nice job of is just creating the mesh. As you can see on the screen on the right-hand side, that is the mesh that was created from that scan. Being able to have the photographs from the scan, I can texture map that mesh. Now, takes just a few minutes. Creating the mesh takes a little bit of time, depending on how crisp, clean, and detailed you want that mesh. You could spend, just like cleaning up a point cloud, you could spend countless hours creating that beautiful mesh. Is it worth it? Is it needed? What's the end goal? Yeah, I really need to. Nah, I just need to get a quick mesh, and it's a space. It's taking up space. So keep that in mind. Texturing, it's very, very simplistic. It is going to use the photographs. Next slide. So now you saw the before texture. Now you see the after texture. And really, I mean, that's pretty doggone cool, right? I mean, if you're like me, I just find it absolutely amazing. That is good looking data. That's a good looking mesh. So very, very easy to do. Just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of education. Next. Now, enough about the software, Register 360, the CloudWorks, and the 3DR. Now what we want to do is get into leveraging, new software integrations. Point cloud data is big. Yep, point cloud data can be massive. It can be IT's worst nightmare. It is. It can be. Cyclone 3DR, like I said earlier, it's not completely brand new. It's at least a couple years old. But what it's starting to do and how it's starting to catch traction is, in today's society, unfortunately, COVID's still around every once in a while. It flares up, and a lot more people are working from home. All right. Well, instead of me having to download my point cloud data, take it home with me, work with it, and then it fills up my local C drive, what Leica has done is introduced Cyclone Enterprise. It is a central repository. I always tell people that Cyclone Enterprise has two major functions. There's some minors, but two major. Number one, it's a central repository for all your point cloud data. When it can be web-based on Azure, AWS, or it can be hosted on an internal network. All right. All my point cloud data is kept in that one location. All of my point cloud data is streamed from that one location. All of my point cloud data is going to remain on that one server and not scattered all over various computers. Nice part about that is when we utilize Cyclone Enterprise, I can stream point cloud data from the Cyclone Enterprise server directly into AutoCAD using the CloudWorks tools. CloudWorks for AutoCAD, Navisworks, Revit, MicroStation, BricsCAD, any of those that have a CloudWorks plugin, I can download or I can stream my point cloud data directly in there. The other major thing that Cyclone Enterprise does is it is now called, it has a part called TrueView Live. All right. This took the place of TrueView Enterprise, the viewing software that was web-based. And what that allows is now I have Cyclone Enterprise, I have TrueView Live. I can allow anybody to have access to that data. And there are some requirements there. We're not going to go into that just because of time's sake today. Like I said, we can spend hours talking about this. But I could give individuals access throughout my organization. Your project managers, they don't need to see the point cloud data. They just want to see the pictures and be able to measure. So I give them access to that Cyclone Enterprise, the TrueView Live. John or Jane Doe can go in there, view the data, measure the data, and they don't have to download anything. They don't have to install anything. You just give them a link to it. They click on it. They put in their credentials. They're off and running and being able to measure, fly through the point cloud. I know if any of you have used TrueView Enterprise in the past, it was always orb to orb, or from red sphere to red sphere. That takes me from pictures to pictures. Now I can fly through it, or I can go sphere to sphere or orb to orb, viewing the photographs. I now have all that capability at my fingertips. So Cyclone Enterprise, two major components: central repository, data management, data storage. The other thing is I can view, measure the point cloud in TrueView Live. That also means that I can, once my model, my 3D model is completed, I can also put my 3D model inside the TrueView Live so that I can see both the existing conditions of the point cloud and the new model overlaid on each other. I can now use that as, wait for it, coordination. I know that's a bad word, but now I can use it for coordination. All right. Moving on, after Cyclone Enterprise, I do want to put in, hang on a second, I do want to put in one note that here at Imagine It, we have taken this to the next level, the Cyclone Enterprise, and we have the ability to take, we've had a lot of requests over the past couple years of, man, I really wish I could take my point cloud, see my point cloud. There's a piece of equipment, and I'm a manufacturer. I want to see that piece of equipment, but it's in Vault, Autodesk Vault. I'd love to be able to do that. Well, now we can, utilizing geotags and Vault Pro, the Vault Thin client. I can now link my Vault data directly to my Cyclone Enterprise point cloud data and use that as a type of facilities management. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to let us know. Now, we've finished kind of going through the software portion. We're going to jump into the last two slides. And the next one is going to be at Imaginet. We understand that scanning's been around for a while. A lot of people have done scanning. We have a service called an Assess and Advise. This is important. Reason being is what this allows us to do, come in, we're going to interview your staff. We're going to look at your, any documentation that you've put together, any SOP, standard operating procedures, standards. We're going to look at a holistic view of your scan process, your scan workflow. And we're going to give you an analysis of that workflow. We've done some that were like, man, you guys are really, really good. The only thing we might suggest is in the near future, look at something like an analysis program like Cyclone 3DR. We've also had other pendulum swing and said, hey, you guys are spending a lot of time looking or scanning. It looks like you guys are over scanning. This gives us the opportunity to assist you in making your scan process more efficient, faster, which, let's be honest, does a couple things for us. A, saves time. B, saves money. If we can cut our process down by making a few modifications, we're saving my organization money. We're going to be able to do more with it. So our Assess and Advise is something that we do quite a bit of. We've been very successful with it. We've helped quite a few companies really streamline and become more efficient. The next thing, and the final slide, I believe, is looking at just training. A lot of people go, oh, I can figure this out. Yeah, that's great. We hear it all the time. It's easy, I'll figure it out. And a couple weeks later, like, hey, I can't get these to register. Can you help me out? And we're like, hey, did you do this? Oh, I didn't know that tool existed. Training is important. I don't want to hand my son a keys to the Ferrari. I wish my dad would have. But I don't want to give somebody the keys to the Ferrari and say, good luck, it's a manual, and they've never driven a manual. We want to start off on the right foot. We want to start off with as much education as we can. Because if I do that, we're going to be more efficient, we're going to be faster, we're not going to spend as much time in the field, we're going to make money faster. And at the end of the day, I don't care what you say, it's all about the money. We have to become more efficient with what the tools we have. If we can do that by having training, our typical training class is 2 days. 2 days that could potentially save you multiple days on the back end, well worth it. So at this point, I've kind of went over just a little bit of time. Any questions?